Hello guys, today in our video we will discuss about the history, reality and records of the Epstein files and the people included in these files, so stay tuned with us. Let's start the video. Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy financier whose social circle included powerful politicians, celebrities and billionaires. Beyond that status, Epstein engaged in years of criminal sexual abuse and trafficking involving minors, which is why multiple major investigations produced vast documentary trails. These trails are what journalists and the public now call the Epstein files. The files aren't a single folder, they're the collective body of records connected to criminal investigations by local police, state prosecutors, and federal authorities, grand jury material generated during federal prosecutions, grand search warrants and evidence seized from multiple Epstein properties, and internal law enforcement reports, and memorandums and emails, financial records, flight logs, contact lists, and photographic evidence, civil litigation records, including from accusers' lawsuits against Epstein and associates, investigations into co-conspirators such as Ghislaine Maxwell, because Epstein's crimes spanned decades and crossed jurisdictions. There was no single consolidated file until legal and political pressure forced one to be assembled. Hence the modern use of the phrase Epstein files to describe the legal evidence archive spanning millions of pages of material. Second, early investigations and the birth of the archive, 2005 to 2019, Palm Beach and the first investigation, 2005 to 2008. The earliest official records in what would become the Epstein files began with Palm Beach, Florida police in 2005 to 2006, responding to complaints that Epstein was paying underage girls for massages and sexual contact. That launched interviews, witness statements, and search warrants, the foundation of the files. Key developments in this era include 2006, a Palm Beach grand jury indicted Epstein on solicitation of prostitution charges. 2007, federal prosecutors drafted a much broader indictment with dozens of charges. 2008, Epstein accepted a controversial plea deal, pleaded guilty to 2 state prostitution charges and served a lenient 18 months with work release. A non-prosecution agreement granted immunity to Epstein and unnamed co-conspirators. That non-prosecution agreement was sealed and hidden from victims for years, a decision that would later fuel fierce criticism and calls for accountability. That plea deal, documented in court papers, became a major historical source of outrage and legal dispute later, and those documents are part of the files. Renewed focus, federal charges, and Epstein's death 2018 to 2019, the case lay in relative obscurity until 2018, when investigative journalism, notably the Miami Herald, highlighted the scandalous 2008 deal and connected Epstein's ongoing behavior to decades of negligence by prosecutors. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested on new federal charges of sex trafficking minors, triggering extensive FBI and U.S. attorney investigations with interviews and victim statements, digital device searches, financial and travel records, including flight manifests, internal agency records on how previous prosecutions were handled. Epstein died in custody in August 2019. Authorities ruled the death a suicide. That left the federal case unfinished, and its investigative documents sealed in justice databases. The records from this period are the largest and most sensitive portion of the Epstein files. Civil litigation and co-conspirator records, 2020 to 2024, while the criminal case was unfolding. Civil lawsuits by survivors also generated detailed records, depositions, correspondence, exhibits that were later unsealed or obtained through litigation pressure. One example, Ghislaine Maxwell's civil suit, Giuffre v. Maxwell, produced thousands of pages that were eventually released years later. Maxwell's conviction in 2021 and related filings added to the documentary universe that would later be folded into the broader public debate about the files. Third, public pressure, politics, and the push for full release, 2024 to 2025, calls for release by 2024. Epstein files had become a political flashpoint. Soon politicians, advocacy groups, journalists, and survivors demanded transparency about what the government knew and who was mentioned in the evidence. Some political figures publicly stated they would release the files if elected, most notably during the 2024 U.S. presidential campaign. Importantly, before 2025, there was no law requiring the government to release these documents. The files remained sealed under normal grand jury and investigative confidentiality rules, and large portions were not publicly accessible. The Epstein Files Transparency Act 2025 pressure culminated in the Epstein Files Transparency Act, passed by bipartisan majorities in both houses of Congress and signed into law on November 19, 2025. Key provisions included: DOJ must publicly release all unclassified records relating to the Epstein prosecution and investigation within 30 days. DOJ must make the files available in a searchable, downloadable format. DOJ must provide unredacted lists of all government officials and politicians named in the records. The law passed overwhelmingly in the House, 427 to 1, and unanimously in the Senate before being signed by the President. This law is the legal foundation for the partial releases and the political fight over disclosure in late 2025 and early 2026. Fourth, document release under the Transparency Act, December 2025, January 2026. Initial release and what's been made public on December 19, 2025, the statutory deadline. The Department of Justice began publishing files, marking the first time the general public could browse their contents. Public releases have included photos and images from Epstein's properties and social contacts, flight logs from Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express, noting passengers over many years, emails and communications from Ghislaine Maxwell and associates, court filings and exhibits from civil and criminal proceedings, investigative records from FBI and DOJ databases. Criticism of redactions and scope. The released files drew immediate bipartisan criticism for extensive redactions, including entire fully blacked-out pages, removal of files shortly after publication, difficulty in organization and searchability, lack of obvious smoking gun evidence implicating specific high-profile individuals. Lawmakers, including co-sponsors of the Transparency Act, have publicly said the releases do not comply with the spirit or letter of the law and have sought judicial appointment of a special master to oversee compliance. Partial release starts early Jan 2026. As of early January 2026, DOJ has released approximately 12,285 documents, approximately 125,575 pages, less than 1% of an estimated 2+ million documents responsive to the law. DOJ says it anticipates completing disclosures in late January 2026, citing victim privacy protections and redaction needs. Critics call that timeline vague. Fifth, what's in the files? Substance, not speculation. While many claims circulate, what the files actually include based on releases so far and descriptions by journalists, flight logs, records showing people who flew on Epstein's jets over years. Presence in logs does not prove criminal behavior. Emails and communications correspondence between Epstein, Maxwell, and others, some previously unknown but heavily redacted. Photos, images from Epstein's properties and associations. Photos alone are suggestive but not evidence of criminal acts. Investigative material, interviews with victims and witnesses, law enforcement notes, internal prosecutorial memos, many still sealed or redacted, court filings, civil and criminal filings, exhibits, and evidentiary material that document the factual background of abuse claims. Sixth, legal and transparency challenges redaction rules the Transparency Act allow. Redaction only to protect what victim identities or information that could harm ongoing investigations. Classified or foreign policy sensitive information. Lawmakers and advocates argue DOJ has used redactions to hide reputationally sensitive and investigatively significant material, not just legally protected content. Deadlines and compliance. DOJ missed the December 19, 2025 compliance deadline, prompting legal pressure and discussions of court-appointed oversight to enforce release requirements. Searchability and accessibility. Early releases were criticized for a poor search interface, unstructured file organization, and fractured formats, making research and analysis difficult. Seventh, the bigger questions and what we actually know. No confirmed client list yet despite rumors and political spin. No verified smoking gun list of clients, in the criminal sense, has emerged in the publicly released files. Many lists are contact books or flight logs that indicate plans, not criminal conduct. Public figures appear. Many prominent names appear in photos, logs, or correspondence, appearance not equal to evidence of complicity in trafficking. Victim-centered redactions. Many documents are still withheld to protect minors, survivors, and legal procedural fairness, legitimately so under the law. Ongoing political fight. Republican and Democratic lawmakers alike have pressed for fuller release and less aggressive redaction, reflecting the public demand for accountability and transparency. Eighth, why this record matters. Reality check. The Epstein files are not a completed expose. They're an evolving public record auctioned between legal obligation and bureaucratic resistance. What's clear? They contain massive historical evidence of exploitation and trafficking. They reveal how prosecutors handled and mishandled past cases. They show Epstein's extensive social network. They raise questions about institutional accountability and transparency. What is not clear? There is no publicly verified document proving any specific high-profile figure committed trafficking. Redactions make many investigative documents unreadable. The full archive has yet to be published. Ninth, looking ahead, what will come next? Additional releases in January 2026 and beyond. Aids possible court oversight to ensure compliance. 8, independent analysis by journalists and researchers. What you should watch here. New disclosures of unredacted flight, email, and ledger records. Grand jury transcripts, if and when they can be lawfully published. Congressional or judicial oversight reports. 10th, bottom line, the Epstein files are a historic, unprecedented trove of investigative material, but so far the public has seen only a tiny fraction of it, and most of that is heavily redacted, contextually ambiguous, or procedural. The fight over disclosure is still in progress, both legally and politically. So, here are the names of people included in Epstein files: Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Ghislaine Maxwell convicted, Tyler Dershowitz denies wrongdoing, Bill Gates, Kailas Wexner, Kevin Spacey, Jean-Luc Brunel, deceased, charged in France. So, guys, that's it for today. I hope you liked the video, so please like, subscribe, and share the channel. Goodbye.